Hey there, kiddos. This is video 6.4, where we will be covering rates and ratios. And in particular, we're going to be seeing how we can solve problems using tape diagrams. So, as we've been talking about ratios and rates, there are just a couple things that we want to keep in mind. Some just reminders about vocabulary. So, as we're going through this particular lesson, there are things that are going to be remembered. So, number one is if we're talking about a ratio is a comparison of a pair of non-negative numbers. So it's a number compared to another number. And those two units can either be the same. So if, for example, if we're comparing in a classroom boys and girls, people, and if or those units can be different. So if we're talking about dollars per gallon or laps per minute, the two things that we're comparing are different in that case. We have equivalent ratios. That's when two ratios that express the same relationship between two terms. And then we finally have terms. Those are the two things that we're comparing. And then today we're going to be using a tape diagram just as a way of representing equivalent ratios that have the same units. So let's take a look at this first think about it question. If you could please have your notebook open in the top left-hand corner, please write Unit 6, Lesson 4. Our aim for today is that we want to be able to solve problems using tape diagrams. And so what is that going to look like? Well, if we take a look at our first think about it question, it says Carly and Asia recently ran against each other for class president. The ratio of votes for Carly. So we're seeing that first off, we have Carly. That's our first person or our first, as we talked about, unit. And then we have Asia. That's the second person or second unit. And we see that the ratio is 4-1. So I'm going to write C to represent Carly, A to represent Asia, and we're going to write 4-1. Now remember, there are three different ways that you could write a ratio. It can be written like what we see here with the colon. It can be written when we have the fraction, well, what looks like a fraction. And then finally, we can write it with words like we have in this word sentence of Carly to Asia. It then tells us that there were 150 votes cast in the election. How many votes did Carly win the election by? So here is our total. The total number of votes is 150. And we're going to use our tape diagram of 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 pieces of tape there to 1 piece of tape for Asia. And the total number of votes is 150. So all these pieces of tape, if we see that there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of tape, all of these pieces of tape are going to be equal to the 150 votes that were cast in the election. Well, what would one of these pieces of tape be equal to? Well, to figure that out, we would take the total, 150, divided by 5, so that we can figure out what one of these pieces of tape were. And if we do that, 150 divided by 5 is equal to 30. That means each one of these pieces of tape is equal to each one of these pieces of tape is equal to 30 votes. So Asia got 30 votes, and here Carly got 30, 30, 30, 30. And our question was, how many votes did Carly win the election by? Well, if we were to take this, which is 30, and take this, which is 30 times 4, which is 120, 120 minus 30 is equal to 90. So Carly won the election by 90 votes. And we can see that, once again, with our diagram here, our tape diagram, that each one of the pieces of tape equal to 30. Carly had 3 more pieces of tape than Asia. Each of those represents 30 votes. So it's a total of 90 more votes than Asia. Let's move on to the next question. So in your notebook, what you should have is the following: Carly, Asia, our tape diagram that's here, and then how we figured out that this was equal to 30 by 150 divided by 5, because there's a total of 5 pieces of tape. I'll let you pause right there for a moment to make sure you got this in your notebook. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Next question. The Aspen ski resort, not key resort, has started to keep track of the number of skiers and snowboarders who bought season passes. So right off the bat, What are we comparing? We're comparing skiers and snowboarders. The ratio of the number of skiers, so we see that skiers are coming first, who bought season passes, to the number of snowboarders who bought season passes was 3 to 5. So we're going to write ski and snow. Let's make that snow a little bit better. There we go. So skiers, and snowboarders. And the season pass for skiers was 3. 1, 2, 3. Snowboarders was 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're told if 1,250 more snowboarders bought season passes than skiers, how many snowboarders and how many skiers bought season passes? Well, if we're looking at our total here, we're told that there was 1,250 more snowboarders that bought season passes. Well, looking at our tape diagram, we see that there are 2 extra pieces of tape here. This is how much more snowboarders there are than skiers. And we're told that this 2 pieces of tape, or these equivalents of number of snowboarders, is equal to what? Well, we're told that this is equal to 1,250 snowboarders. If these 2 pieces of tape represent the 1,250 snowboarders, how would we figure out what one piece of tape represents? This is our Dora the Explorer moment. Yeah, you're right. We would take this 1,250 and divide it by 2. And when we do so, that's equal to 625. So that means each one of these pieces of tape is representing 625 people, whether it be snowboarders or skiers. So for our skiers, we have 625, and there's 3 pieces of tape, so times 3. So there's a total of 1,875 skiers. And then for the snowboarders, it'd be 625, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of tape. So that represents 3,125 snowboarders. Our question asks, how many snowboarders and how many skiers bought season passes? Well, here are the skiers, here are the snowboarders. Once again, in your notebook, you should have the following. 1, you've annotated and written out skiers to snowboarders. The question told us there was 1,250 more snowboarders. This is how many more compared to skiers there were. That represented the 1,250. We divide by 2 to let us know what one piece of tape in our diagram is representing. That's 625 people. And then we use that to figure out the number of skiers compared to the number of snowboarders. I'll give you a moment to make sure that that's in your notebook as well. So far, we see that 1, what we're doing is that we're making sure that we annotate our questions so that we're seeing, hey, what are we comparing? What are the 2 things that we're comparing in this question? Skiers and snowboarders. The last question, Carly and Asia. So that's number 1. Number 2, draw our diagram. Some way to model what it is that we're working with. And then number 3, let's just make sure that we're answering the question. In this particular time, they're just asking us how many snowboarders and how many skiers there were. And the last question was how many more votes. So we want to make sure that we answer the question. Whatever that question is that we're being asked, let's make sure that we're answering that. Because we could be doing the math correctly, but if we're not answering what we're being asked, we're not going to be able to demonstrate that we understand what's going on. All right, 5, 4. This is going away in 3, 2, and 1. All right, partner practice. You and your partners will be working on this together. Bachelor level, I'm going to work through the first one with you. So in your notebook, please write out partner practice. You don't have to write the whole question because you're going to have the classwork or have the packet with you, or you'll just have your digital copy. But you want to make sure that you have this work with you so that as you're working with your partner, or if you're a kiddo who's at home because you're absent and you're watching this video, when you get back to class, you'll be caught up and ready to go. So there are 3 things that we want to remember to do. Number 1, annotate. Number 2 is we're going to want to draw our model. And then number 3, we want to make sure that we answer whatever the question is. All right, so it says Mrs. Chabarro packs 6 almonds for every 3 craisins, so the little cranberry raisins, in her snack pot. She has 12 more almonds than raisins, or craisins. How many almonds does she have? How many craisins does she have? So, number 1, annotate. What are we annotating? We're annotating, hey, what are the things that we are comparing? In this case, almonds and craisins. We see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 almonds for every 1, 2, 3 craisins. We are told that she has 12 more almonds than craisins. So 1, we have our annotations. 2, we have our model. We're told there's 12 more almonds than craisins. Now we want to answer the question, how many almonds does she have? How many craisins does she have? So we can see 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. So that means this is the extra, or this is the more than that Mrs. Chavarro has for the almonds. And what does this equal? These 3 pieces of tape? Well, these 3 pieces of tape are equal to 12. If we're looking at to determine what the 1 piece of tape would be, well, it'd be 12 divided by 3. That's equal to 4. So that means each piece of tape is equal to 4. So if that's 4, this is 4, this is 4, this is 4, and so on. So now, step 3, answer the question. How many almonds does she have? Well, there were 6 pieces of tape, and each piece of tape is equal to 4. So that means there are 24 almonds. For our craisins, it's 4 times 3 is equal to 12. Do we follow all 3 steps? We have our annotations, we have our model, and then we've answered the question of how many almonds there are and how many craisins there are. Awesome. In your notebook, make sure you have these 3 things of your annotation, check. Your model, check. And then we answer the question, check. Question number 2 for your partner practice. And this is what I want you to have open up. And this is what we're going to start with in class when I see you again. Alrighty.